which is one of the topics that we as humans consume, we create, and we as marketers are always kind of thinking about. So there's just so many angles to really think this through, and this idea of television and kind of what it means in modern times, and kind of how we can create content that's engaging for our clients, but at the same time make sure that we're reaching the right people is a discussion that is going to continue. So we're extremely lucky to have both Erica and Alan here, who are both experts in the space and are going to share a ton of insights. And we're also really lucky to be in this venue in the first place. There's no reason, and I mean this in like nicest way possible, there's no reason why Simul Media should have said yes to us. Like, there's no big of the connection here that I reached out to, but they were kind enough to open their doors to allow us to kind of come in. I've worked with Matt, Alira, and Sam, who have been just unbelievable throughout this whole process. So if everyone could please give them a huge round of applause, that'd be amazing. And that kind of brings me to what's next, which is we're going to have Matt Collins, who's the SVP of Simul Media, share a few words about what Simul Media does, maybe share a few job opportunities too, if anyone's looking. And I'll pass it to him right now.
Thank you, Andrew. And thank you all for coming. It's great to see this space so filled up and with really bright minds. In preparation for this event, I did a little bit of research on SUNY Binghamton and learned some impressive things. The first thing is that, I'm probably preaching to the choir, but the first thing that I learned is that it is according to US News and World Report, it is the top ranked SUNY school in the SUNY system. Right. The thing that I thought maybe this room wouldn't necessarily know is that it has been for 20 years in a row named a top 50 public university by US News and World Report, and this year was ranked number 32, and is oftentimes mentioned in the conversation of the public Ivies, which includes places like William and Mary and University of Michigan. So kudos to you. We think of ourselves as being a pretty smart group here, but the intellectual horsepower in the room definitely took a big step up when you guys all came in the room. So thank you all for coming. So, a bit about Simul Media. We are an advanced TV provider, and we have a common phrase around here when we talk about the work that we do in television. We often will say, television is powerful, but has fixable problems. And people who've been in the TV industry know what I'm talking about. We believe that targeting in television can evolve and should evolve beyond a simple Nielsen age gender demo and be able to incorporate first-party data or third-party data to get a more precise read on a customer. Similarly, campaign measurement should improve so that advertisers can get a better read, especially when they're having the sometimes tough conversations with the CFO about how did your marketing perform. And being able to layer in data and linking that to viewership to establish more certainty is something that we believe. We believe that advertisers and agencies deserve transparency. They need to know how much it costs, how much is the take rate of a vendor. They need to know how is it performing, what are the media metrics, and they deserve it quickly. And finally, they deserve control. Advertisers and agencies deserve the opportunity to be able to take control of their advertising and fix things that may be broken, or optimize things, make better things that could be made better. So what does that all mean? Well, it means, among other things, that we are asking an industry that has been doing certain things a certain way for decades to take a fresh look at it. And the only way that that happens is if we as a group have thoughtful, engaging conversations about the topic of television. And that's what's so exciting about what's happening here tonight from our perspective. We're gathering around an idea, a medium that's been a part of our lives, a part of our living rooms, literally, and we're revisiting it and re-examining it and wondering what else it could be and where it's headed. And I think you're going to hear some really fabulous things from our speakers on that topic. So I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm so grateful that Erica Meyer is here. I think this is the first time that we've had an instance where a soon-to-be employee is actually speaking in our main conference room to a crowd. So I mean, it's a pretty extraordinary event. So Erica, welcome and congratulations on joining Simul Media. It's great to have you. I will close with, we are always looking for great talent, especially in the realm of sales and sales development. If you are a passionate seller, if you believe passionately that there is a better way to be servicing advertisers, to be servicing the entire TV ecosystem, we would love to hear from you. And we've got a full listing of all of our openings on our website. But I've said enough. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Andrew, but thanks again for coming. Really appreciate it.
Let's give it up one more time for Matt Collins. He's the reason we're all here. Thank you, Matt. We like to do things a little different at our events, which means that we have the luxury of having our speakers be introduced by someone who actually knows the speaker versus me reading like, Erica has worked 10 years in this industry, which everyone does, right? So, Tara Tartel-Ciaza, I think I nailed it. Close, okay. She and Erica go back to their days as pegs at Binghamton. If they're not hanging out here, you could catch them in the streets, maybe singing a tune. So stay tuned for that. But without further ado, I'll have Tara come up and share more words about our speaker, Erica, this evening.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, my name is Tara. I graduated from Binghamton in 2010 with a degree in history, so obviously I'm now a marketing professional. That tracks, right? But we're not here to talk about me. I met Erica in my freshman year at Binghamton when I was a baby freshman and I really wanted to make friends, and I auditioned for an a cappella group, and Erica was super fun and welcoming, and we hit it off. I'm just gonna answer the question that is on everyone's mind, which is yes, it was exactly like Pitch Perfect. And we're waiting on our royalty checks. Anyway, after fun and games of college, Erica moved on to bigger and better things in the real world, armed with an MBA and a can-do attitude, and I floundered about completely directionless, wondering, what is life? What is my job? And stumbled into the same industry that Erica's in. Erica has been in the buying side of a media agency for almost, has it been 10 years? We'll say 10 years. And I work for a TV network, so I'll go to my upfront and she's there, and I'm like, oh my God, hi. And she's like, hey, and we don't sing at those. Because no one wants to hear that. But what I'm saying is there's a reason she is gonna be speaking tonight, because she is a hardworking professional. She's more than qualified. She's bringing a lot of really fun insight and data. I saw her presentation. It's fun data though, so everybody get your data hats on. No, it's not just all data, don't leave. But she's about to lay some serious media knowledge on us, so everyone give it up for Erica.
Thank you. All right, first I gotta learn how to use this clicker. Ha, amazing. Hi everyone. So you expected maybe to meet Jill Kelly tonight, who's the CMO of Digitas, but she couldn't make it, so here I am. So I currently am the Senior Partner Associate Director at Midas Exchange. It's a WPP company powered by Group M, so some of you may be familiar with Group M. We're a sister agency of theirs, and we're in the corporate trade world. So if any of you have heard of Active or Icon, we work in the same space. And as of Monday, I will be an account director at Simul Media. So this timing's a little fun. But anyway, so a little bit more about me. So who is Erica? Well, born and raised in Brooklyn. Which is unusual for a Binghamton student. I was an expert Girl Scout cookie seller when I was younger. I quit piano lessons after 2 years because I hated practicing. I love singing in the shower to this day, and sang a cappella and all that. And I went to a lot of competitive schools my whole life. I went to always in, the honors program, always looking to, how do I get into college and how can I do well on my SATs? I went to Stuyvesant High School. Oh, amazing, Alan, okay. I went to Stuyvesant, and at my high school orientation, they said, how are we going to get you into college? So I was always, college focused and focused on Ivies. And yes, Binghamton is a public Ivy. But I did not expect to go to Binghamton. It was not really high up on my list. But once I toured the campus, I was really excited to go. Oh, yeah, that's me. That's kindergarten Erica in the red circle. So I went to Binghamton not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life, as most people may. So I decided, why not chemistry? Where all good TBMC stories start. So I went to orientation. I had taken AP chemistry, and the head of the biochem department said, well, you really shouldn't do organic chemistry because freshmen fail my class. And so I signed up for organic chemistry. And worked really hard and did fine. I was very good at chemistry, but I didn't love it. And so I was trying to figure out what my passion was, and I was set to graduate in '09, which was the height of the recession. So was kind of like, well, why don't I stick around another year and I'll get my MBA? But first, I had some fun. So my obligatory pods picture is in the bottom left, so I did study a bit. But the top left was Spring Fling. I advertised for DP dough on my forehead one time, so that's that picture. That's my family. On the right is I was in the Pegs, and that's me and Tara in the middle. We recorded a CD together. Of course, went to some toga parties, because who doesn't in college? I also worked at the call center, which is not the telefund. That's not who calls you for money. It's the one where you actually call the university. Yeah, Tara worked for the telefund. And I also was a Binghamton tour guide. So surprising, I know. So anyway, I kind of found marketing because I was like, well, you know what? Anything that I do when I graduate, I need to learn business and how to make money. So I sort of fell in love with marketing. I took a consumer behavior class and really just loved the psychology of how to reach the right person. What are they thinking about when they, go to purchase, and how to drive them to do that. So I got a concentration in marketing and leadership and consulting. And when I was set to graduate, I got an internship at CaraTrade, which is an Aegis Media barter company. So I started my career in barter, and pretty soon I was about to graduate. So now what? So I went on to BConnect. Tara told me earlier I was drinking the Binghamton Kool-Aid, and I was trying to find a job, and saw a posting for the New York Post for an assistant in ad sales. So I went for the interview. It was a really long day, like 5 or 6 rounds, back to back to back. And I nailed it, and they gave me the job, and so I was really excited. And then the president of CaraTrade called me and said, hey, I just landed at Midas Exchange. It's a brand new barter shop owned by WPP, which is the largest holding company in the world, powered by Group M, which is the largest media conglomerate, media investment company in the world, and I want you to come work for me. And I was like, well, what will I be doing? She's like, I have no idea, but we'll figure it out when you get here. So I told the New York Post, sorry, I'll be starting at the Midas Exchange. So what they do is they're a corporate trade company. So essentially, without boring you to tears, what they do is they help marketers with undervalued assets. So on the left-hand side, you'll see excess inventory, capital equipment, real estate, gift cards. It could be anything that they can't recoup the full value on in the marketplace. And so we'll go to them and say, hey, we'll pay you the full book value for that asset, for excess inventory, and in exchange, you'll place your media expenditure with us. And you can use that asset as sort of a coupon. So if you're going to spend $5 million in media, you may spend $4 million in cash and $1 million in your undervalued asset. So it brings value to, these advertisers. The way that we can do it and make money is our media is non-disclosed. So we have upfront arrangements with networks where we'll put up our own capital and commit money in the upfront that we don't know if we're going to get it. We're on the hook for it, and they'll give us below prevailing marketplace rates. That's kind of locked in, and we can tap into it whenever. So that $4 million in cash that they're paying, we may own it for 3.5. So a lot of holding companies are getting into this corporate trade game. But I was very confused. I was right out of school. I didn't know what I was talking about. And I was cold calling CFOs and CMOs trying to pitch them on this offering. And it's a little complicated and very confusing. So I was employee number 2 at Midas, me and the president. And it was about that way. We were maybe like 5 people for about a year and a half. And I worked really hard, a lot of long nights, $30,000 a year, amazing. Usually got home at 11 or 12 o'clock at night. And we started finally getting some clients, and we got clients in fast. So all of a sudden, networks wanted our money. This is fun now. Okay, so I was going to all the upfront events. I met some pretty cool celebrities. Bottom right, that's Dylan McDermott, my future husband. And Tiffany Thiessen from those Saved by the Bell fans, Andy Cohen, lots of good ones. But kidding aside, the more experience I got in the business, the more exciting that my job became, not just for the perks, but for the business. I became really passionate about it. So over the 4.5 years that I was at Midas, I'll get to that. I've been there 9 years, but you'll see. So I was helping prospect new business. I managed over $100 million in media billings. I worked on over 30 accounts in pretty much almost any category you could think of, with the exception of studio business, and I'm very grateful for that. That's really long nights. And the TV investment team grew from 2 to 65 people, and I helped hire a lot of them. Got exposure to all aspects of the business. We were really small. Everyone kind of had to get their hands in everything. And also touched things that weren't TV. I was responsible for radio buys and out of home and newspaper, which I didn't take that job at the New York Post because newspapers going the opposite way. But in any case, I had a lot of exposure. And then I got a message on LinkedIn from the CEO of Chloe's Soft Serve Fruit Company. Not sure if any of you know them, but they have a flagship store in Union Square, and their whole product is soft serve fruit. It's fruit, water, and sugar, and it's the consistency of frozen yogurt, and it's delicious. I went there, I tried it. They wanted to bring me over as the director of client services. Director sounded awesome to me, so I was like, okay, great. And they're a startup, so I'd get the stake in the company, and they're going to sell, and they're going to be in Whole Foods, and they really sold me on it. So I went, and it was a bit of a bait and switch. This was not my best career move. After a month, they were like, okay, well, we're going to have you plan a full-fledged food truck tour over 3 DMAs, and we're going to have you figure out where to get the truck and where to store the dry ice. And I'm like, this is so not what I do. But luckily, my chief investment officer called me a month in and said, hey, we have this associate director opening. Would you like to come back to Midas? And I'm like, oh, well, I'm really happy at Chloe's. And I really would like to give it at least 6 months to a year. And he was like, well, we may not have that opportunity then. So I went back to Midas. So for another 4.5 years, I've supervised large teams, managed overarching relationships with vendor holding companies. So I was the portal for the discovery upfront for the past couple of years. I've onboarded new business, including a $150 million pharma account. We actually overhauled the entire corporate culture. We had a ton of turnover one year, and they brought out an outside consultant that we worked with, and that was a really interesting, eye-opening experience. I spearheaded the 101 and 201 training programs for the assistant and buyers, and I actually launched Midas's digital offering along with the CIO. And my latest foray was in advanced TV. So we were looking into it for some of our clients, and I was really excited to get into it because the more I'm in the business, the more I ask myself, what's next in TV? Similar to what Matt said, it's the same thing year after year, upfronts, rate of change. There's erosion in linear TV because people are migrating away from linear TV. They're watching on their mobile device, on their tablet, on connected devices, and the measurement isn't really there, and so the networks can't monetize it, and so they're floundering, and there's got to be some evolution here, and so what's next? And how can I stay relevant, in my own career? So, which brings me to, what is the future of TV? So, a few data slides, but I won't bore you. So basically this slide is showing cable is down. There's some cord cutting happening. Maybe not as much as you might think. Cable goes, from the last 5 years, 86 to 73% cable, cable plus rather. Paid cable is only down slightly, but you'll see, OTT wasn't available 5 years ago. You'll see from a penetration perspective, great news for marketers, DVR is only available in half of TV households. So people that are watching linear TV are not skipping ads, which is great news. But again, you'll see smart TVs, smart speakers, Alexa, Google Home was not available. Smartphones, not available in 5 years before. Cable penetration is declining, with MVPDs, more options, Sling, DirecTV Now, things like that. And young adults are no longer watching TV as much as they were, down almost 20%. Heavy declines, which we sort of knew. But the good news is this chart is basically showing that across all demos, live TV is still the most used source of video. Even among people 18 to 34, it still constitutes more than half of their viewing, which is great. See, TV's not dead, which is really good for me. The advanced TV exposure that I got kind of got me thinking, and we were hosting this event here, and I saw on LinkedIn that a friend of mine just got a promotion here to director of sales. So I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I'm gonna be here, would love to catch up with you. Hey, Kyle. And so we hopped on the phone, and they're hiring, and so this is kind of how that happened. So thanks, Binghamton Marketing Collective. But anyway, so that's my story, and just a couple takeaways in terms of what I've learned over the past 10 years. I've learned to speak up for what I want. I was very timid coming out of college, and I sort of, worked hard and felt like if I worked hard, my work would be noticed, and I would get promoted, and everyone would value and love me. And you have to really be visible in order for those things to happen. Politics are real. So, navigating that was really hard for me at first too. Being, seen by the right people at the right times, and people talk. Never burn a bridge. So the people that I left at Midas when I went to this frozen fruit thing, I left on good terms. They gave me a call. I'm very happy with my decision here. I don't plan to go back a third time, but, who knows? Be proactive, not reactive. And this is just with your career, but also, in general. I think coming from Group M, and I love Group M, I've worked there for a long time, but they're a little old school, and they're a little conservative. And I think, in order to stay ahead of the curve, you need to innovate before your clients ask you for it. So I hope to see more of that in the industry moving forward. People in leadership positions aren't necessarily good leaders. I noticed that people get promoted because they were good at their last job, and then they have no idea how to manage anyone. So that's been an interesting observation for me, and I've taken a lot of that into my leadership style. And a people-first mentality, in my opinion, always wins, because if you have strong people that love what they do and love working there, then you can achieve anything. So that's my story. Thanks, guys.
Let's give it up for Erica again. She literally found out she was going to present Friday, put 25 beautiful slides together in God knows how little time. Was it 25? I don't know. Around there. So seriously, thank you, Erica, for like stepping in. And I guess the question that's on my mind, I don't know about everyone else, is like, what was your favorite Girl Scout cookie? You said you were. Wow, I'm a Thin Mints guy. But okay. Okay, cool. So next we're going to have David Berkowitz come up and introduce Alan Walk. David is a advisor on our board. He was a speaker at a previous event of ours, but beyond just those accolades, he is a founder of Serial Marketer. He's a former Binghamton commencement speaker himself. And him and Alan met back in like 2008. I believe it was Go Blog Social era. And they have been marketing experts and leaders ever since. So without further ado, I'm going to have David introduce Alan. Come on up here.
Thank you, and so a real pleasure to get to introduce Alan. This is the second time in not that many events so far I've been able to introduce a speaker, and both times it's people who I've met along the way through the industry, where I didn't meet them because they went to Binghamton. I'm just clearly naturally drawn to Binghamton alumni. I have very good taste in the kinds of people I get to hang out with after hours and serve on panels with and like. Before I introduce Alan, I also want to share one little tidbit that was my favorite thing I learned while writing for Pipe Dream. I had a column called Literally Speaking, and since this whole Ivy League thing is coming up, I wasn't intending to share that. I want this to be Alan's show, but just indulge me for 1 minute. That I did one column, and I don't even know how this came to me at some point, but for a few months I was really into anagrams. And so I just started, and this is like before there were programs where you could just like do this, go online and like find some anagram generator and beat everyone in Scrabble. So I started doing this, and I wrote this column for Pipe Dream. I even called Pipe Dream a demi paper or a dime paper, which both work. And then I discovered that Binghamton University, I literally had to do this again, sorry, while Erica was talking, because I didn't quite believe it was true, that if you rearrange the letters of Binghamton University, cannot make this up, it becomes smug brain not in the ivy. So, like, seriously. Yeah, I know, and I just love seeing that look, because this was like there's no way, and I kept checking this and literally crossing out letters over and over again, because I'm like there's no way, 20 years ago this had to be sort of the start of fake news, and at least that was one of the more honest things I wrote about in Pipe Dream. So as for Alan, I met him. It's also great because in my contacts in my phone, I keep very detailed notes, and so we met at this event. We met at this event in 2007. Initially, I just, the one word I had to describe Alan was blogger. I did put down that he went to Binghamton. It clearly came up early. It was also funny because as soon as we started talking, he's like, "Oh, so how's have you talked to CK lately? This friend of ours," and that was who introduced us. Now 12 years ago, so it's also funny how all kinds of connections like that they don't really fade away. We met at this place Iguana, which I was also amazed to see it still exists, and so on West 54th, and when I met Alan, he I don't know that he was going to bring this up. It's not a bad thing, like I did with Bill Lazard, but. He was known as the Tangerine Toad, and that was his blogger name, and it was awesome. I mean, I was like, who is the Toad? And like to get to meet the please, because I've been waiting 12 years to ask you why you did that. And then I was checking through our old emails, and so we went through this period of being on panels where I'd get to learn from him, and he was like one of the early guys I was learning from in the social media space, and then he pivoted to video, and then there's this period of like a year where all the exchanges back and forth are about Alan and I following each other on Foursquare, Path, TripIt, Twitter, Plancast, Scoville, don't remember that one, Empire Avenue, Google+, Pinterest, Forecast, Into Now, Chill, I don't know that one, it wasn't a dating site. Of course, Facebook, Matcha, maybe a tea thing, do you drink a lot of tea? And Goodreads. So I've been following him for a very long time. I've been really amazed by his switch to become this expert in the TV and video space, and there before practically any marketer was really paying that much attention to it. So I credit him with so much I've learned there, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say tonight. So, Alan?
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of my bio through Binghamton, how I evolved into what I did, and then we'll go for a couple minutes about where the TV industry is. So like Erica, I went to Stuyvesant High School, although I went to Stuyvesant High School in the mid-'70s when it was still in the East Village. It was actually not far from here. It was on 15th between 1st and 2nd. It was a very different time. People weren't all that concerned about college or where they were going because it was just, yeah, whatever. And like, I got stoned a lot, but I also got good grades, and, I had really good SATs, and a bunch of my friends were applying to Binghamton and some other schools, and it seemed like Binghamton was a good place. And, my parents were kind of freaked out. It's like, I'm not taking it seriously. But Binghamton seemed like as good a place as any, and there I was. And when I got there, I had always liked writing. When I was in high school, I used to write for the school literary magazine, and I had taken all sorts of advanced English classes and all. And John Gardner, who at the time was the preeminent creative writing professor in America, was actually teaching at Binghamton, of all places. And I was fortunate enough to be one of his students. And funny enough, John Gardner agreed with my parents that the thing to do if you wanted to actually be a writer was to either go to law school or medical school. A lot of famous writers, from Somerset Maugham on to Tolstoy, had been either lawyers or doctors, and his theory at the time was you'd make a lot of money and you would then be able to spend your time writing, which is clearly not true. But I was also way ahead of myself in school. I had just turned 20 the week I graduated from college, and my parents thought that law school was a great thing, and they, it's like, well, you'll pay for it, great. And I had done well on my LSATs, and so I went to Boston University Law School with a whole bunch of people from Binghamton. And law school was fine. Boston University was a whole lot of fun. Being in Boston and all that, was a great city. But I had worked for a big law firm my second summer, and I just remember thinking, God, these people are miserable. I don't know if I want to do this the rest of my life. But I didn't know what else to do. And my roommates, I always sort of congratulate her for this. My roommate's sister at the time was a lawyer, and she hated it. And she sat me down one night. She's like, look, she's like, I know you. I know you're like my brother. You're going to graduate. You're going to move into a one-bedroom apartment in a doorman building and start going on dates to nice restaurants. She's like, and there's no way in hell you'll ever give that up to make $25,000, which was the going rate, and an entry-level job, doing something you really like. She's like, she's like, you'll be 23 when you graduate. Just do something else. And if it doesn't work out in a year, so you'll be 24 and you'll still be a lawyer. And I was like, yeah, that sounded good. So my parents were completely freaked out by that. But they did one of those, it's just a phase. It's just a phase. And I had a good friend, a woman who had actually gone to Binghamton as well, who was working at an ad agency as a copywriter. And I was like, well, that sounds like a lot of fun. Like she's, she got to go on these cool shoots and TV, and I was a good writer. So I was like, well, let me do that. And so I figured out how to put a portfolio together. And 6 months later, I got hired by J. Walter Thompson as a copywriter. And I did that for a long time. It was a lot of fun back in the day when advertising, the creative end of advertising was still pretty vibrant. And, I learned, got to sort of exercise my creative ends and, and worked at a bunch of big agencies, a bunch of boutique startups. It was also a lot of hours, but it was also fun, and I got to wear shorts to work and all sorts of good stuff like that. I was always interested in computers and technology. And so when the internet came along, I sort of jumped on that. I helped start up BBDO's web agency, which is called Atmosphere. I think I was employee number 7. We were still sitting on cardboard boxes at the time. And I did that for a while, and then I was getting older, and which is not a good thing in the creative end of advertising. And sometime in the I guess mid 2000s, like 2004 or 5, somewhere in there, I was working at Ogilvy on the IBM account. And they wanted to do something about blogging, and I thought, I should probably try writing a blog just so that I actually know what I'm talking about. I was the creative director at that point. And I was like, but I don't want to do it under my own name because that'd be weird. And like people at that time weren't supposed to have opinions. And like I didn't really think anything, and I didn't really think anything was going to come of it either. So there was an ad agency, David, named Strawberry Frog. And I thought it was the goofiest name. And so I was like, okay, I'll call my blog Tangerine Toad. And what? Because I thought 4 people would read it. I didn't tell anybody I was writing it. I didn't even tell my friends. But for some reason, it took off. I had written this piece, which it's funny, it's still relevant today, called "Your Brand Is Not My Friend," which was about how a lot of companies sort of think that like think that they're your friends on social media, but people don't actually interact with brands like that. And there's a sort of a sub-theory to it called prom king brands, that there are certain brands like Nike or Apple or Starbucks that people want to be friends, people want to interact with on social media because they're cool. But if you're not one of those brands, like it's not happening. Like if you're Maxwell House Coffee, you have a very different road to hoe than Starbucks. Anyway, it all took off. I got involved in all this blogger stuff, and people started asking me to do consulting gigs around social and entertainment and all that. And finally, a friend of mine was working agency called Deep Focus. They were working with HBO, and he's like, HBO needs to figure out social television. It's 9 months. It's at least a 9-month gig, and I was like, okay, it's not going to get better than that. So I jumped, and that was my first consulting gig. And this was really back in the day. I think it was like 2007 or something like that, 2008, when Facebook would refuse to call back the executive vice president at HBO. They're like, no, we don't talk to clients. And she's like, but I want to give you millions of dollars to buy, to take over the Sopranos Facebook page. Click. And so that's sort of where that was at the time. So fast forward, I started doing a lot of work with a company called KickApps. And KickApps, which doesn't exist anymore, KickApps is sort of a buddy media competitor. They built socially enabled websites. So if you had a website, they would add social functionality to it so people could comment using Twitter or Facebook. They would either add it to an existing website or build it off the bat. And a lot of companies wanted that, but they didn't understand how they were going to make money off of it, right? They kept, they were like, oh, we want it, but like then when you talk to them, they didn't really understand what they were doing with it. They just knew their competitors had it. So I was sort of the head of strategy and went in, and I was doing a lot of work, and they're like, why don't you just come to work for us full time? Which since you're here all the time anyway, and it was fun. We did a lot of good stuff. They had a smart business model where they did a lot of work for sports franchises. And if you build a social site, say for the New York Knicks, there's no reason that the Boston Celtics can't use it because it's, you just change the color scheme because they don't have overlapping fan base. So they used a lot of sort of gamification and things like that. Anyway, in 2010, I think it was, they got bought by a company called Kit Digital. And Kit Digital built out OTT apps. And there was some software that, it was never clear why they bought KickApps. There was some software that they had that they thought they could use for video. And they said to me, this is starting to become a thing now. In the early days, OTT, which was over the top, and the apocryphal story about OTT is it's called that because in the old days it was aimed at immigrant communities. So if you were, a Hispanic or Asian immigrant, you could get TV from back home. Right, they would show Chinese language. They would show the TV stations from Hong Kong, and Chinese immigrants would get would pay for this service, and it would come through, and where the wires went over the top of the TV set. And that's why they called it OTT. But then it suddenly started to become a thing where networks got interested in it. And they were like, okay, do you want to, and they're like, do you want to be our head of strategy? And if I had learned one thing all those years of working in advertising was how to become an expert in anything in just 3 months. So I dived in, and and we were building this stuff, so I knew as much as anyone else about how to do it, and got myself connected to a couple of Wall Street guys who were sort of starting to invest in this and knowing about it. And I did know a lot of people who worked in the TV industry, and we were building it out. And we started doing stuff around it, and I got very involved. This is when second screen was becoming a big thing, and somehow I wound up being the second chairman of the Second Screen Society, which was, oddly enough, a friend of mine had said, hey, do you want to do this? And I was like, yeah, fine. But it was a great career move because I got introduced to all of these startups and all these people who were doing the startups, which helped me, A, understand what was going on, and B, got me a lot of connections to other people. Even though most of them eventually failed, we still met a lot of people doing it. So I was at KIT, which then changed its name to Pixel, and gosh, in about 2014 or 15, it was clear that industry was sort of a race to the bottom. Building out apps was nothing special. So everybody who was doing it had basically the same business model. I'm like, okay, they're not going anywhere. I need to figure out what happens, what goes next. So a couple of friends of mine had started up this company called Brave Ventures, which was being funded by Gary Vaynerchuk, and they were good friends. They're like, hey, do you want to come work with us? And I was like, yeah, why not? And at the same time, I wrote this book called Over the Top: How the Internet is Slowly but Surely Changing the Television Industry. And right after it came out, I got an email from somebody at the New York Review of Books saying, "Oh, we're fact checking something on your book. We just wanted to see this." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." And I had assumed it was that my book was the fact check for something that they were writing about. And then I get an email about a month later saying, "Oh, have you seen the new issue?" I was like, "What?" It was the cover. There was a cover story in the New York Review, and I self-published this, by the way. I'll just circle back. There's a cover story in the New York Review of Books that compared written by Jacob Weisberg, who is the publisher at Slate, and it compared my book to Michael Wolff, the guy who wrote the Trump bio, to his book about the TV industry, and he liked mine a lot better. And everything just kind of blew up. I had self-published the book because this guy named Jeff Hazlett, who I don't know if you know who he is, he used to be the CMO of Kodak, and he has a show on Bloomberg, and he's sort of a big business speaker. I had worked with Jeff on a couple of projects, and he was the one who encouraged me to write the book, and he's like, you have 6,000 followers on Twitter. He goes, you don't need a publisher. He's like, it's not that big a market. You can market this yourself. And Amazon, if you ever do want to write a book, Amazon makes it super easy to publish stuff. It's aimed at housewives in Iowa who write romance novels. So it's they walk you through everything. It's like, here, input your book. We'll give you the exact template for the cover. Here's what you need to tell the graphic artist. I mean, it's super simple. It's super simple. But this helped us to take off. And then I also started doing a lot of speaking around the TV industry because that was a big thing at the time. Everybody wanted to know where the future of TV was going. So while I was working at Brave, I was also working, because that wasn't a full-time thing, I was also working with a company called MediaLink, which I bet a lot of you have heard of. And doing consulting gigs through there. And that was really good because I actually learned how to do actual consulting gigs because MediaLink does sort of your McKinsey Bain style consulting in addition to 30 other things that they do. But that was the piece that they had me come in on. So it was great. It was I was getting paid to sort of learn. Plus they were tapping all my connections and expertise. So it wasn't like it was a win-win situation. And then they were able to sort of turn us on to some clients. And then the Brave guys, this is really complicated. The Brave guys were doing a lot of work with Turner. And finally, Turner said, hey, we should just hire you guys full time, and bought them out. And my current business partner, Jason D'Amata, who ran this branding firm called Fabric that we worked with a lot. He was like, hey, do you want to just pick this up and go with it? TV Rev, which is the name of our company, was the blog that we had sort of started as thought leadership for Brave Ventures. And we're like, we're going to turn this into a business. And then we're like, okay, but how? And we struggled. We had a bunch of different business models that we were playing with, and we sort of settled on something like in the last year or so, really, of this is how we make money. We do these special reports. So this is our most recent one, and you all are going to get a code to get a discount on this. But we just came out with this, literally it was just released last week. I wrote this with Mike Shields. I don't know if any of you know who Mike is. He used to write for Wall Street Journal and Business Insider and Adweek. He's working with us now too. And it's really sort of a how-to guide. It's called Understanding Ad-Supported OTT. And this is the third one we did. We did one on ACR and one on blockchain for media. And we get sponsors for it, so we tap into our connections. So for this, Hulu is a sponsor, and DataZoo, and Tegna, and Truex, and Inscape, and iSpot, and probably one or two others that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But they pay us, and then we sell them, and then we do education off of it. So we get people to come in, and we do full-day boot camps or half-day. We do it for big brands, companies in Cincinnati, which we're not allowed to mention the name of, and for TV networks, and for MVPDs and all that. And it's great. I work out of the house. I get to, see my kids and do it, sort of set my own schedule. I still do a lot of writing and speaking. I've also started getting paid to be the entertainment at places, which is also nice for speaking because everybody's interested about the future of TV. So I get to travel a lot and do a lot of speaking, which has been a great piece of it too. And it helps with marketing. I'm on Cheddar a lot. I was actually just on this afternoon. Because I know John Steinberg and because he's like, yeah, you should come on TV. So that, that helped. John is the guy who started Cheddar. And so we've kind of made a business. So if I had to say, and I have a completely untraditional career path, and yet it's sort of become the new normal. So many people that I know who started off going in one direction, something happened, and they went in another direction, And the thing is to always sort of go with the flow. And the best career advice I ever got was when I was starting off in advertising. It's funny enough, was a headhunter, but she was very cool. And if you've ever watched, I can't remember the name of the show. It was on Showtime about the ad copywriter. Anyway, she's the headhunter is based on her, and the show is actually based on this woman. But she said to me, she's like, always make sure that whatever you're doing is well regarded and will have you well regarded and useful in the industry as a whole, not just in the company you're working for. He said it's very easy for people to do a really good job for their current employer at something that nobody else could give a flying fuck about. So that's a problem because too often people do get sort of trapped into something, and it's very good for where you are, but it's not something that's translatable to anywhere else. The flip side of doing what I do is it's very hard for me to put me in a bucket, right? I'm not I haven't done ad sales my whole career. I haven't done strategy my whole career. So people always have a tough time going, okay, what does this guy do and why should we hire him? Which is why I work for myself. And that's a great thing. And David and I, it's funny, we were talking about before the sort of ups and downs of working for yourself, which is you never know how much money you're making from month to month, and getting paid from clients and all that. But it's also the most fun thing I've ever done because you feel really in control of your schedule and your life. And that's a huge thing. So anyway, that's my bio. And let's see if I can get this to work about, here we go. Some TV trends for 2019. So one of the big questions, and Erica touched on this, is what exactly is TV these days, right? So one of the reasons you constantly hear about TV dying, TV this, is TV just used to be this linear thing that you turned on and it played and that was that. But now you've got sort of you've got all this OTT, you've got Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, all of that. You've got people watching time shifted. You've got people watching TV shows not on TV. You've got YouTube, which is this sort of gray area. You've got what we've been calling pro-am, which is amateur stuff that's done by people with professional experience, so people who are actually, real actors, real producers, real directors, but they're doing stuff on YouTube. A good example of that is that show, which I'm blanking on the name of, about the pot dealer in Brooklyn that thank you. Yes, High Maintenance, which started off as a YouTube series, right? Or video, I think it was on Vimeo actually, but it started off like they made it themselves and it got picked up by HBO. So like all of that is this sort of, it sort of becomes this weird gray area. And even in doing this report, you guys probably hear the terms OTT and CTV a lot, right? And everyone's like, and we asked do y'all know the difference? And people are like, And all it is OTT and is any television that's watched through that is delivered. So we define TV as any high production videos that's over 20 minutes and that's 20 minutes or longer in length. That's pretty much TV, and it's in series form for the most part. And OTT is anything like that that's delivered over the internet. CTV is that portion of OTT which is watched on an actual television set. Now, it turns out that something like 80 to 90% of TV is actually watched on an actual television set. Hulu has stats. I think it's something like 80% of Hulu is actually watched on a TV set. And most, 14-year-olds watch on their iPads because they don't want their parents talking to them while they're watching TV or to see what they're watching. But for the most part, everybody else will watch TV on a TV because it looks better. The other piece of TV that we've sort of identified is that there's sort of two ways people watch TV these days. There's sort of, lean in and lean back. So lean in is shows like Game of Thrones, Orange is the New Black, Stranger Things, anything where you actually either binge it or if it's a weekly series where, this is what you're doing now. Like, and you set that time aside and you're like, don't talk to me, whatever. Then there's the lean back is all this stuff when you're making, people turn the TV on for background noise, right? I'm making dinner, I'm answering emails, I don't want to turn on the stereo. So it's that sort of background and sort of figuring out how those two things work together in this world, in this new world is going to be interesting. So the other big question for TV, and this is also something Erica touched on, is how do we measure it? Because it used to be that it was really easy to measure TV. Nielsen did these panels and they do these diaries. But all of a sudden, time shifting came in, and it's like, okay, well, how do we measure that? And then people are watching, OTT, and Nielsen diaries don't measure that, and they're watching on different devices. Now, there's a whole bunch of ways, and what we see developing, and it's sort of in here, is things like ACR, which is automatic content recognition, which is something that's done off of smart TVs. So, to make a long story short, when you set up and it was amazing. So one of the things we found with these, and all the reports we've done, is how many people who you would think would know things don't, right? And you probably find that in your job, in your sales job, that I remember with, people, and I won't say the agencies, but people at big ad agencies would be go to us, okay, I know that a DMP means demand side platform, and I say that in meetings, but what is that? And the same with the TV people will go, these ad tech companies are always talking about publishers. Who are these publishers? Why are there publishers involved in TV? And it's like, no, that's you. They just call you that because that's the word that they use. So the way we do these reports is we do about 100 off-the-record interviews with people, 10, 15 minutes with people in the industry to sort of get where people's heads are at. And then we do some actual survey work on top of it and some research, and we sort of put everything together. But basically, people are just confused. They have no idea how any of this works. In measurement, I think the survey we did was over 95% of people said measurement on OTT was a problem. So circling back to ACR, which nobody really understands, when you set up your smart TV, especially Vizio TVs, they have the largest, they are close to 30% of the market. something pops up and says, do you mind if we track you for marketing purposes? And the FTC has weighed in on how you actually have to say this, because Vizio got fined in a lawsuit about 2 years ago about this. And most people are like, yeah, I just want to set up the TV and say, yeah, sort of like, you click the thing for Facebook to let Facebook collect, when you sign up with Facebook. But so they have about 10.1 million homes right now that they're tracking through Vizio Inscape, and there's a little pixel on your TV screen, and they match it to a list. Like there are other companies who sort of track everything, record everything that's being broadcast on TV, and they can figure out whether this is being watched live, whether it's being watched over a DVR, whether it's being watched OTT, and where it was and all that, because they can sort of see where the times were, what the ad loads were, what commercials were. And then they're able to get close-ish to a one-to-one match on it, or a lot closer. And the general feeling is that it's going to be panels plus ACR plus set-top box data, plus this other thing called multi-touch attribution, which some of you might have heard called business outcomes, which is basically tracking people through the sales funnel. So if you really want to get in the weeds, and why not, since we're all working in marketing, it's actually kind of interesting. They create what they call lookalike models. So they'll say, okay, these are the people who saw the ad, and here are people who have similar demographics and buying patterns to them who did not see the ad. And we're going to sort of see the difference between these two groups based on the different ads that they saw. And so that sometimes they can find, which is interesting too, that like a certain network will have much more like make this up. People who saw the ads on ABC will react, or much more likely to take action on the ad than people who saw it on CNN, even if they had. So in other words, people on CNN may have actually. More of them may have taken action, but they probably would have even if they hadn't seen the ad on CNN, because they would have seen it somewhere else. Where the NBC people were unique, that was the only place they would have seen the ad. So they do all kinds of magical stuff like that to get to better measurement. The problem is nobody agrees on it. Nobody agrees on how to create data sets. Nobody agrees on how to, who the audience. If you want to reach, moms in the market for a minivan, every network, every platform has their own definition of that. So that's a big struggle for the industry now. Is how do you start defining all these audience segments? Because everything is going to be bought. And everything in TV moves really slowly too. Everything's gonna be bought in the next 5 to 10 years on an addressable basis, which means that if Erica and I are watching the same show, she will see one commercial, I will see a different commercial, even if we're watching it at the same time. That's something that happens on the internet all the time, but it doesn't happen on TV. There's delivery issues and all that. And the other problem TV has is that people don't watch TV individually, they tend to watch it in groups. So how do you figure out who's watching together? How do you identify households versus individuals? So I'm going to be employed for a while doing this. So cord cutting still isn't happening. This is one of our big bugaboos. You will see the media has sort of taken up, and you constantly see these headlines, the tidal wave of cord cutting. And I was like, no. And and we've tracked it. Like, there are these people do these bogus studies. Like, it's basically like asking people in January, do you plan to go on a diet? And so the last people, do you plan to cut the cord this year? And then they'll publish it, and publications will pick it up. And there was something a few months ago we had tracked where they're like 60% of people have cut the cord. I'm like, really? Like, do you not realize that Comcast would be out of business if that happened? Like, didn't you ever, and legitimate publications were running with it too, which was sort of shocking. But the truth is, when you factor in the VM, so the industry TV industry has never met an acronym that it doesn't like. So cable companies are called MVPDs because it stands for I always remember it as Mountain View Police Department, but it stands for multi-channel video platform distributor, or programming distributor, multi-channel video programming distributor. And that's because in TV lingo, cable actually refers to charter Comcast companies that deliver via cable as opposed to satellite like Dish and Direct and telcos like Verizon. So VMVPDs, which are virtual MVPDs, which is Sling, Hulu Live TV, and all that, have been growing at an astronomical rate. They have about 10 million subscribers, and they've picked up a great deal of the slack. Now, again, you'll also see a lot of stats that don't count them in, and they're like, oh, look at all these people who left. But if you actually count in people who switched, and we call it cord shifting, basically switched from Comcast to Sling or Hulu Live TV, the number, say in 2018, it's 625,000 people, which is about 0.6%. But that is about to change because the Flixcopolis is coming. What is the Flixcopolis? In the next year or two, there are going to be 4, possibly 5 giant Netflix-like services launched from Disney, Warner, which is basically taking HBO and making it HBO on steroids, Apple, NBCU, and then the 5th one is there's a very good chance that CBS and Viacom will merge and they'll take CBS All Access and blow that out. So, and the thinking is that Apple will probably be ad-free, but the others will have some sort of Hulu-like model where there's an ad-supported version and an ad-free version, but it will increase the amount of OTT inventory a lot, and it'll also increase the rate of cord cutting. Not astronomical, it might go up to 5 to 8%, but from 0.5%, that's a pretty big amount. We're also going to start seeing a lot of churn through that because people are, no one's subscribing to 8 services at $15 a month. So people will binge on something, and then they'll move on. They'll because it's easy to drop the services. It's all online, and it's all month to month for now. So a couple of things we see happening from that are a rebundling. So we think that Roku, Amazon, and Apple are going to start creating new bundles. So they may say, okay, we'll give you a couple of broadcast networks plus Netflix, Hulu, and Warnerflix, and the Washington Post, and Audible and Spotify, because it won't just be TV. And, it'll be 20% less than if you paid for them all monthly. And we also think that a lot of the individual services at Netflix might say, okay, sign up for 2 years and we'll take 25% off the price. Because the churn is just going to get you. People are just going to, it's too easy to churn. And if you think about the old way where you had to call up and they were incentivized to get you to stay, there's no way they can all stay in business because the other piece of it is that TV is an art, it's not a science. There's some science involved, but what makes a hit show and what doesn't, as much as Netflix talks about using data, you can have the best actors, the best writers, directors, producers, and the show's a flop. And then who would have thought that a show set in a fake medieval time about dragons and wizards would be the biggest hit of the teens? So there's no way to really know what's going on. So the Flixcopolis will really change everything. We think the final piece of this is the companies most at risk from this are cable networks that don't have a strong brand identity. So if you're in a good place if you're HGTV or CNN or Discovery because people know who you are and what you stand for and you have a big fan base. The flip is if you're A&E or somebody like that, where nobody works for A&E, or one of these, there's like hundreds of these smaller networks like the Baby Channel or America Hero Channel that nobody knows what they stand for. It's going to be really hard to convince anybody to pay cash money to subscribe to one of those, especially when there's so much else on these 8 Flixes that they're spending, what do we figure, $20 billion on of content. Now, some of that's international and all, and a lot of Netflix originals are repurposed shows from other countries, but it's still a ton of stuff. No one's going to be able to keep up with it. So if you have some random channel, it's going to be really hard to get people to watch. So anyway, I will leave you with that. If you want to, if your company will pay for it, it's ott.tvrev.com, and if you use the code Binghamton, you will get $50 off. So thank you very much.
Awesome, guys. So thank you again to Alan. Everyone give Alan another round of applause. Alan, are you still blogging under Tangerine Toad? Is that still in existence?
I even gave up the Toadstool, which is the blog. I just migrated it over to TV Rev.
Got it.
Yeah, and if you have a tvrev.com, we have a lot of different resources, so it's a good source of everything in the TV industry.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, Alan, for all those incredible insights. We really do appreciate it. I'm going to have David, Alan, and Erica come right back up here. We're going to do a little panel. David's got some questions, and then, of course, we will open it up to the audience as well. And yeah. Awesome.
Nice. I'm going to keep things quick because I want to make sure you can catch all of it and get some of your own questions in. But I've got a few I want to run by you, and then happy to open it up. Start a bit on the career side. Now, I mean, you've both been in some of these roles and at some of these companies where you've been one of the first employees, or you've been someone originating a position, didn't exist before, one of the first in a department. How do you know if that's a good idea?
I'll take this one. I mean, my alternative was going into a dying, medium, is, newspapers and selling that. I mean, I kind of took a risk, and I didn't know if it was going to pay off, but, for me, it was like, okay, well, it would be kind of cool to ride the wave if this is going to be successful. I mean, for me, the decision was it's backed by WPP. So it was a startup, but it wasn't really a startup. If they flopped, they could maybe find another place for me within the WPP, umbrella. So it felt like a safe risk for me going over there.
Yeah, so I mean, I've had it on both sides. I've had where when I was a creative at ad agencies, where I wound up, took another job, and it was like, wow, you lied. Like, sort of similar to what happened with you with the Froyo. We were like, okay, like you just sat there and completely lied to me about what this was about. And then you just kind of have to go, oh, how do I get out of this? Or first, how do I make it not as awful? And then how do I get out of here? Because, if these people lie to you, about the job, who knows what else they're going to lie to you about. And then in other situations, when I've been the first one in, it's been amazing. I mean, I thrive in sort of smaller companies and startups, and I think it's just like, because you can make it what you want, and you can sort of come, and you can really just sort of go, okay, keep a positive attitude. It's like, instead of just focusing on what we can't do, like, here's stuff we can do, and and really make a difference in how the corporate culture goes.
And thanks. And Eric, I got to say, during your talk, speaking of the whole yogurt thing, I was so disappointed because you were setting this up in such a good way, and I'm like, oh, I really want to try that. And then it's like, oh no, I'm never going to touch this product. It's like, it was just such a.
It's really delicious.
Oh, okay, well that's good that you can still be gracious about that. Speaking of brands. So, Alan, I'm going to start with you on this one because you've had a voice for so long, but Erica, I want your take as well. And especially right now, for those who maybe haven't been doing this a ton, how important is it today to have a voice out there? And if you haven't really been doing that yourself, where should someone begin?
I think so. Again, there's been a sort of an overload of it, like you've seen, like in a lot of these publications, and people, I've been asked, God knows how many times, to ghostwrite stuff for CEOs and stuff, and it's like, and you see what a big business it's become, but it's really something you have to feel good, comfortable with yourself, and if you do, then it's just really kind of chasing it down, like finding people who are prominent in the space. Okay, I'll give you. There's some guy who, it's funny enough, he goes by the entertainment strategy guy. He is an anonymous blogger. He lives out in LA, and he started commenting on stuff that I was putting on Twitter, and he actually had some smart stuff to say. And so I was like, oh, this guy's pretty smart. I followed him back and said, hey, why are you anonymous? And he explained that he might want to get a job at one of these companies he's saying bad things about. And all, but we started a dialogue, and he's going to I'm going to actually publish his first stuff in TV Rev this week, and so that kind of thing, where it's like, talk to the people who are actually at the front of the industry, or doing stuff you want, and if you have something smart to say, they'll respond to it. I mean, that's how I learned about TV. I got in touch with Rich. I don't know if you know Rich Greenfield. Rich Greenfield is a Wall Street guy who writes a lot about the TV industry, and I started commenting on his stuff, and he's like, why don't we go to lunch one day, because you seem to know what you're talking about, and I've learned so much from him, especially when I was starting out.
And Erica, what's your take?
Well, in terms of marketers, I think in this day and age, because everyone's interacting socially, they're kind of, I think they kind of has to have a presence there. I don't really know exactly how you start, but I mean, to me, it's got to be authentic. You know, the things that resonate most to me are like the thing that comes to mind was the whole Wendy's thing, and they were like bashing all the other fast food chains on Twitter. And do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And yeah, and
It was like Jack in the Box or what was it? Burger King, right. Just and playfully sort of bashing them, but everyone, it caught on, and it went on fire. And I think it was something that was light and playful, fun, but it made sense, I guess, for the brand and where they are in the space. So I don't know. I think you kind of do need some sort of voice to break through.
Yes, and also if you've been to the Wendy's on 33rd and 5th, it is one of the more depressing places on earth, and so like you need a way to entertain yourself. To see someone based out of there, like please just anyway, I have been there, and as far as the TV business goes, so Jeff Zucker had the famous phrase. It's amazing how long this lasted, but nothing's quite replaced this when he was the head of NBC in, I guess, less controversial days. But he talked about trading analog dollars for digital pennies. And it's very interesting now. I mean, Erica, we saw the data that you're talking about, and it's like, okay, there might still be 50% of the market on live TV, but how long that's going to last, you don't have to necessarily debate that. But especially as OTT comes in, and you can buy the equivalent of, say, banner ads on a Roku, then is this happening all over again? And I mean, how concerned are you about that cycle repeating itself in the shift to OTT, or is this just not something to be all that worried about?
Well, go for it. Okay. I mean, so I'm trying to think of that. So for a long time, being a TV ad sales exec, especially in the 80s and 90s, was probably the best job in America. If you were, I'm not even joking. If you worked at NBC in the 90s as an ad salesperson, you made a 7-figure salary and you pretty much did nothing. You showed up at Ford and said, "Hi, friends, mad about you, Seinfeld. Sign here, let's go have lunch," and that's all you did. And then all of a sudden, people are like, "No, you have to work. You actually have to figure out audiences, and you have to." And the thing and they've kind of gotten over this by now, and this is sort of where Zucker was coming in, is like, okay, you have to sell off slices of your audience. You have to sell off, men who are in the market for muscle cars, and then hope that somebody else is going to buy the rest of it. And they would look at what happened on the internet and freak out. Oh my God, it's a race to the bottom, programmatic, blah blah blah. And they kind of realized, okay, the internet is different. The internet is, we always say the internet is like stars, right? It's just this infinite. So of course it's going to be, because there's always another website. There's a limited amount of television content, and people want that reach. And people want, one of the things that thing I was talking about before, multi-touch attribution does, is show how TV ads just linger. In other words, we can all remember TV commercials we saw as kids, right? We can all remember TV commercials we saw 5 years ago. Nobody remembers a banner ad they saw 5 minutes ago. So the TV ads really have this value to them that people are sort of appreciating it. And the big factor, and the biggest sort of thing now that they're trying to figure out, is the holy grail of TV is what they call fewer, better targeted ads that brands will pay more money for. And everybody kind of agrees that that's where we need to go. But brands and TV networks have very different definitions of more money. So they're kind of working that out.
Well, so are you talking about Prime Pods or the 6-second ads and the high profile stuff? I mean, from an agency perspective, we sit in meetings and we're like, right, but you're going to charge us for the same as a 30-second ad, but it's 6 seconds? How does that make any sense? And so agencies are pushing back on it, and I don't really know that networks are really gaining that much traction in the space, but they're trying to monetize and come up with new creative ways to make more money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's good. It's at least from an agency perspective, we focus a lot of our time on linear TV because that's still where a bulk of our clients' budgets are. And talking about dollars versus pennies, a lot of our digital business, like we will fight tooth and nail for a client budget that's like $50,000 in digital. So it's like what's the point? But yeah, I mean, what's the tipping point where you need to start getting in that game? So yeah, I hear you.
So, any more upbeat questions from audience? They don't have to be.
Oh.
So I actually work for a network that has been doing 6-second ads, and there was a lot of fanfare about it. And we were charging people for a 15 and then only giving them 6 seconds. Also, not everyone has 6-second creative. So that's not something everyone can take advantage of. So my question for you guys is, as someone who works for a major broadcast network that is constantly trying to innovate on the linear platform, do you think that is going to be kind of the way to go in the future, in terms of kind of isopods or kind of sort of interactive ad breaks on linear TV? Or do you think that it's not on linear at all and that eventually we're going to have to find a way to get all the budgets to go to digital because that's where it's going? Or do you think we're going to be on linear for a while? Like, are we kind of too short-sighted with these innovative commercial breaks? Like, are commercial breaks long for this world? I don't know. I would love to know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, from the agency side, I think, a lot of the meetings that we have with vendors, we talk about, the innovation, the 6-second, the isopods and all that. So they're sort of strong-arming us into doing this with our clients and trying to figure out which client can force fit into this innovative thing, and they're kind of pushing the online video and all that stuff down our throats too, and I don't think agencies have really caught up. And you've got the marketers, maybe the more innovative marketers that are the first ones to move on stuff like that, like a Coca-Cola or something like that. But most other marketers are being told by their agencies, that it's tough. The agencies are not on board.
No, not at all. And then that's one of the things we found out in this report that we did, that one of the things that that we heard a lot from networks is we talk to the agencies and they tell us that they're video agnostic. And then we say, oh, so we talked to your video agnostic team, right? And they're like, no, talk to our TV guys, or no, talk to our digital guys. So that a lot of them are not there yet. A lot of the stuff you're talking about, this 6-second and all that, is just a Band-Aid right now because it's really got to go to addressable. And the problem with addressable is that any network doesn't have a way to get the addressable ads to their client. They have, right, because they don't have a direct connection to them. They have to go through an MVPD. Now, there's something that just got launched about 2 weeks ago, Project OR, which is they're going to use, well, they're talking about it, and it'll take a long time. They're going to use this data that they have from the smart TVs to overlay ads, addressable ads, through Vizio smart TVs. But again, it's a small, and they want everybody to come on board, but it's a while, and it's still a small portion of the market. But at some point, and that's one of the reasons everybody's all excited about OTT, is when, say, Hulu because they control the distribution, they can run addressable ads if they want because they're delivering it to you directly. And that's what everybody wants. They don't have any first party data. They don't know, NBC doesn't know who's watching, really. They know a little bit of, they can. Besides
their Comcast households.
Exactly, which is why they bought Comcast, right? But CBS doesn't know who's watching. And so that's why that's why CBS launched CBS All Access, because then they get credit cards, and then they're like, oh, that's who's watching.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we got a question over here from Lee.
Thank you guys for sharing all that. I'm wondering if you have an opinion on the effect that 5G is going to have on video and TV and all that jazz.
So 5G is not going to happen for probably at least 3 years, just because no digital device is backwards compatible, and also they need to rewire a lot of the U.S. But when it happens, it'll be huge, right? It's up there with the Flixcopolis in terms of changing everything. So one of the biggest things it will do is it will create competition for broadband. So mostly 5G is not a mobile. It's not going to be a mobile technology. It's going to be fixed broadband to the home. And so that you'll be able to get speeds of up to 1G. And basically, Verizon will give you a modem that looks similar to the modem you have now, except it won't be plugged into a cable wire into your wall. It'll just sit there, but that's what it will do. And most of the U.S., there's a monopoly on broadband now. There's one company that provides it in a couple of places. There's two, say I think it's 55% is a monopoly, 45% is not. There's some smaller companies, but there'll be competition. So from a consumer POV, suddenly you'll get lower prices and you'll have people competing, and you'll have different, pay TV services as well, whether it's going, partnering with different vMVPDs. So that's going to change things a lot too. And that's what AT&T is gambling on, is that, if we can get, keep DirecTV in business for the next 3 years, then we can sell people bundles of AT&T 5G broadband plus DirecTV.
Other questions? We've got the mic coming for the audience watching at home, thanks to Cliff Sobel and his crew.
Will there ever be any instance where there's the non-supported services like Netflix will have ad-supported services? I was been told in the next couple of years, like Netflix will have ads and Amazon Prime.
Well, it's funny. So probably not in the U.S. probably. So Netflix problem right now is that they've been trying to charge $10 U.S. around the world. And they're finding that in the non-developed world, nobody has $10 US. So they've been doing, and they're not getting, and there's local competitors, like I know in India, they're getting their clocks cleaned because there's local services that charge $1 or $2. They're ad supported, but people are like, well, I have that. But so what they recently launched an experiment I think it's in Malaysia, where they're charging $4 a month, but it's only available on mobile devices. And if that doesn't work, they may introduce some ad-supported thing. Amazon is the real is even more interesting, because Amazon can run ads and you'd never know they were ads. So Amazon could technically say to Pepsi, we're going to run ads and let you buy ads against Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. But we're not going to run them during the show. But the next time somebody we know watched the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel logs on to their Amazon homepage, we're going to put a Pepsi, like 2 liters of Pepsi at the front of their page as a sponsored ad, maybe even with Mrs. Maisel herself in the picture, because you watched it, saved 25 cents on Pepsi, whatever it is. But they've got so much data, Amazon, and they know what you buy, right? We always say Facebook knows who we want to be, but Amazon knows who we really are.
And Amazon does run their house ads before Maisel. They've got the banner ads when you're selecting. So they're house ads today, but they might as well be for Pepsi if they wanted to turn that on. So
Exactly.
Good point. Yeah. Anyone else?
I think it's funny how there's so much conversation around short form, right? 6 seconds and shorter is better. When really we see this behavior of people binging and watching hours of content that they love. So this short form is really just for things that people don't care about and we're just trying to put in front of them. Do you think that there's value and opportunity for brands to get into that long form and actually produce something that is something binge-worthy or something that consumers really care about?
I don't know. Branded entertainment, that happens. Again, I go back to the authenticity, because if it's something that, the whole point is to get people to buy a product, then it's not really anything I want to watch.
Yeah, the Lego movie worked really well for them, and Marriott's done some things that are like set in a Marriott hotel but are actually okay. But not too many brands want to spend that kind of money to produce something that you want to watch. that their product is sort of peripherally featured in?
I could also just add on to that as someone who has to talk to, as someone that has to talk to content creators who are putting their content on my network. You're hard pressed to find, like, there's a reason that HBO doesn't do a lot of product placement. That's what I do at my network. I do sponsorships and product placements. And in order to be on a broadcast network, you have to play ball with advertisers. A lot of content creators don't want to play ball with advertisers. They just feel like it's going to taint their art, it's going to commercialize it. So not only do brands not want to invest money into producing content that isn't going to have a really clear ROI, but content creators that have all the eyeballs don't want to, quote, muck it up with brands. So it's very, very tricky. Just my perspective. Sorry, this isn't about me. I just had... No, I'm sorry. I just feel like this is like my whole job, and I was like, oh my God, I have a thought. Sorry. Okay.
No, it's.
You mentioned programmatic being a race to the bottom, which is for a long time has been, and in a lot of ways still is. But given some of the IAB advancements for OpenRTB in recent years, and the way you can target device IDs, especially in addressable TV these days, do you see programmatic moving into addressable TV, moving into out of home even, or in some of these ways that direct or branded marketing might not expect today?
Yeah, I mean, it's already inaddressable. I mean, Hulu has a private marketplace that they run. Roku sells all their ads on a programmatic basis. It's definitely there, and I think people have gotten over that. I think the race to the bottom fear was something that people who weren't familiar, people who worked in TV, when they'd hear programmatic, they'd be like, "Oh my God, my friend in advertising did that and said it was, in digital did that and said it was a race to the bottom. Make it go away." And, But
So you said private marketplace, but what about open?
I think that's definitely happening too. I mean, there's a lot of walled gardening going on, if that's a word, in TV. I mean, Amazon and Roku are basically fighting that out because they each want to take their percentage, and then you can buy. And that, again, not to sort of keep mentioning my report, but that was one of the big things we found that was so confusing to people. It's like, okay, so I can buy it directly from the network or the platform. I can buy it through one of these walled gardens, or I can buy it through like a Simul Media or somebody like that. Like, which one should I do? How do I know? How do I compare them? And they're still figuring that out.
Hi. We were talking earlier about brands being integrated into the content, such as the Lego Movie. I don't know if anyone else was obsessed with Bandersnatch on Netflix, but if you didn't watch, one of the first choices you make is which cereal you want to eat. And there was a lot of articles around that of how can things like that be branded in the future for actual brands and then take that data and use it. So I was wondering if you guys thought about that at all, if that's coming up in your industry at all.
Not for me, but that was an awesome movie. That was so cool. Just the choose your own adventure, I think that would be so cool if more content creators were doing things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I had seen that, and people were like, "Yeah, that would have been a great thing for them to sell." And I think when you do it like that, where like you're not hitting people over the head with it, it's a smart idea because you wouldn't have realized that Rice Krispies and Cheerios had each paid for it. You just think that was the choice. So it's branded entertainment is not very easy to sort of pull off suavely, but when you can, it's great.
Also, people aren't talking about this enough, but the Choose Your Own Adventure books, a couple of them are on Amazon Alexa, and I started doing, and they're actually pretty good. So so look up that skill. It's a little bonus tip tonight.
We'll take one more question. Woohoo.
Do you think there's a demand for third-party verification on connected TV in today's environment? I know that more and more, there's more visibility than ever before in connected TV where your ads are running, but do you think that there's, companies that are working on third-party, verification for if your TV's on, where it ran, and all those types of insights?
Yeah, I mean, I actually, yes, there is. I know like True Optic does a lot of that, and other companies where they verify that the audiences, and that's blockchain is being used for that as well a lot too, to sort of verify that the audiences you bought are actually who saw it. And so that's going to be a huge factor as everything kind of goes all over the place, and you're not buying everybody who's watching at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, as a TV first person that's starting to get into digital, it blew my mind that when you're buying digital, you can actually dispute what the delivery is with the vendor and then only pay them for the delivery you think happened. That's crazy to me. When you interact in Nielsen data, there's no confusion on that. Everyone knows what the Nielsen ratings were. So when I first started getting into digital, I'm like, oh, I could just claim anything. This is amazing. So yeah, I think third-party verification is huge in that space.
Amazing. Well, let's give a hand to this amazing panel.
Thank you guys so much. One more time for the speakers, for David, for Cliff, for the TBMC board, and for all y'all from taking that step to come out tonight. You know, I learned so much about TV tonight. I can't believe that Erica's kindergarten photo looks just like my kindergarten photo, and something inside me shattered when I realized all these kindergarten photos from New York City public schools are the same damn thing. I'm like, am I in that photo? That looks just like my photo. And Alan, lean in versus lean back TV. I realized that just like every other aspect of my life, I have zero chill. I'm only leaning in. So thank you for that little bit of therapy and realization. I want to announce a few things for tonight. One is we've been so involved with these events. This is our 5th event. We've only been around for just a little bit of time, but Binghamton has done a great service to us and honored us with getting the ability to host our own Alumni Day of Service event. So the Alumni Service Weekend is April 12th to April 14th, and that weekend has Binghamton alumni from, all walks of life, not just TBMC, registering for events that they're going to be, volunteering for. If you register for the Alumni Day of Service, you can actually check off TBMC and show that you're a member of our org, and that will help further show the Alumni Association how thankful we are that they do all this work for us to help co-produce these events by showing that we're participating in their events. So we're actually going to be with Futures and Options. We're helping underprivileged kids learn about career paths. Futures and Options, as you can tell by the name, started for financial careers, but why not show them a little bit of what marketing has to offer, just like we're trying to show Binghamton students. Before I get too ahead of myself, I want to introduce myself. My name is Armand Katri, and I am the co-founder of the Binghamton Marketing Collective. I work at Pinterest in partnerships, so if you have any questions about social media or potential career opportunities at Pinterest, please speak to me. If you have any questions about career opportunities elsewhere, if you're perhaps looking to make a pivot in your career, then also speak to me. I'm not going to try to sell you on a job at Pinterest, even though I probably will. I want to tell you that TBMC is going to be creating a more robust job board and a job offering so that as you're thinking about making that next move, you could talk to someone or at least a familiar face that you saw at one of these events that you've attended. If you're Jesse, then you know everyone. Thank you for coming to all 5 events. If you're interested in a career or you're looking, but more importantly, if you're hiring, email us. We're very simply tbmc@binghamton.edu. Those emails go to the entire board, so if one of us is not available, someone else could pick up where we left off. But by show of hands, is anyone actually hiring at the moment? Yeah?
Oh, sure.
Do you want to talk about what you're looking for? Come on up. And Dimitri, come on up.
Just so happens. So I work for Fox Entertainment, and as of tomorrow, we are going to be spun off into our own little standalone corporation with Fox News and Fox Sports. And as a result, we have some new and exciting things happening. And my team, which does sponsorships and product placements, which is branded entertainment, which is why I couldn't stop myself from interjecting. is hiring a senior manager for digital partnerships, which is like the future, right, of TV, because TV is dying, or maybe it's not. I don't know. So we lost someone in the wake of Disney buying most of our company, and we're looking to hire. And it's really fun because you get to interact with shows that are on Fox. So Family Guy, even though we don't do a lot with Family Guy, Masked Singer, if anybody likes that show, some people do. I don't like watch TV, which is bad because I work in TV, but whatever. So you get to do a lot of stuff in the digital space, which is really exciting because since we are being spun off into a new company, we're trying to be more innovative because we're not as encumbered as we were when we were part of a giant media conglomerate. Now we're a baby media conglomerate. So it's really fun and exciting. So if it sounds interesting, we'd love to hire someone with a couple years experience and a can-do attitude and someone who likes sweet green and coffee. So you feel free to talk to me. My name is Tara. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, that's all I got everyone on sweet green, and now we're all addicted. So you have to like sweet green, or I'll make you like it. So just come talk to me, and it's gonna be great. Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to chat with anyone. There you go.
Thank you, Tara. Dimitri, you want to share a little bit about?
Sure. Yeah, hi, I'm Dimitri. I'm CTO of TimeHop. You might remember TimeHop as a little dinosaur app that reminds you about stuff you would like to forget. So we built a programmatic ad server that turned us around, made us profitable in the last year and a half. We're growing on that. I mostly hire engineers. I need a back-end engineer who writes Go and knows ad tech, and there's like 5 of those people in the world. And then I also need an iOS engineer, and there's 500,000 of those, and I need to find a good one. But beyond that, we are also looking for a programmatic manager, somebody with in-app experience, video experience, and who understands both the buy and sell side. So if you are one of those people or know one of those people, please come find me, and I'll leave info with Armand.
Thank you, Dimitri. I love how Dimitri very quickly said CTO. He's the CTO of TimeHop, guys. This is amazing. Deserves more credit for that. So yeah, please email. You'll see an email coming from me with a recap of the event as well as some of these job opportunities and how to get in touch with Tara and Dimitri respectively. If anyone else has any opportunities but didn't want to stand up tonight, just email us at TBMC. Last but not least, we have an event to keep it going, to keep the initiative the momentum rather from tonight going. We have a few tables reserved at the Gem Saloon. So if you want to go down to 3rd Avenue and 27th Street, just 2 blocks over, that will, let us continue the conversation over a few more drinks. We have about maybe 5 minutes to sort of clean up and start getting out of here. So say goodbyes to everybody, grab your coats, and thank you again for coming.